What's interesting, Kolb's model has been around for 50 years. Many of us, as critical educators, as experiential educators, cut our teeth on this in the 70s and 80s. So it's not new. Yet for coaches, it's integral. It's part of the root stem of this profession. And so where are you spending your time, right? To the bridge. It's not even just a bridge, it's a whole circle. Are we
Circle.
spending equal time in experience and helping our clients reflect on an experience, in generalizing their experience to many different contexts, and then into applying it and coming back with that application like a spiral to look at, well, what happened now? What worked better this time, but what still isn't working?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and welcome to the Coaching Money Podcast. I've been on a mission for the last 20 years to expand the coaching conversation to many. Along with my co-host, Evana Valle, we're going to be exploring coaching as it relates to conversations, connection, and change in both personal and professional settings. Coaching Money is about creating empowering and thought-provoking spaces for conversation which strengthen relationships and enhance results. Throughout the Coaching Money podcast, we'll share tools, practices, and approaches to support you in your conversations, one dialogue at a time.
Hey, Evana, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Jen?
I'm
Great
good.
to be
I'm
here with
really
you.
excited for this sort of, as we're calling it, a bridge episode. It's going to be a little bit shorter than our usual, but we are in between our last episode, which is all about action, and our next longer episode, which is all about awareness. So, as you think about bridge and action and awareness, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, for me, it's really about it's not an either or. In the coaching conversation, whether it be one-on-one or even in many with teams and groups, is when we're thinking action awareness, we might be stronger in one, or as a coach, we might need to expand our range from action into awareness, but it's not in isolation. And if you think of us and the people that we're having these conversations with, really that natural, creative, resourceful, and whole, because that's our stand as coaches with our participants. Like, how does action and awareness play into that? And how do we empower our participants in that conversation and recognize where they're more comfortable and where their growth is, especially because in the context of what our podcast about is in the times of chaos and change, because this is an invitation especially when you're going through a transition or an evolution. And this is a lot of the work that I do with women that I work with, or even people in Italy and their growth of English as a non-native language.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, yeah, I think as we think about coaching many, which of course is groups and teams, chances are in the people and the range of people that you're working with, there is going to be, a real mix of people who are thinking and looking at life through the action lens, and other people in that group or team that are looking at life through the awareness lens. And so as coaches, how do we adjust our range to meet people where they're at? That's the number one principle, right? In coaching many is, how do we meet you where you're at? And therefore, how do I and my coaching partner, my co-coach, meet you where you're at? So even on an individual, but a collaborative level as well, how do we work together to synergize? And I'll just build on your point around change, right? Like, I think the world continues to make really interesting changes in 2024. When we're recording this towards the end of summer, that calls us to be looking at life maybe a little bit differently, looking at how we operate a little bit differently. And so if we are more action centric, how might we incorporate more of the awareness edge? And if you're thinking, why action and why awareness? I realize, let's contextualize this as well, right? We actually, one of our most popular episodes to date, and Yvonne and I were looking at our stats just recently. One of the most popular episodes to date was episode, I'm going to get the number wrong, but it was the one around the 4 elements of coaching, where we started to dive into action and awareness and results in relationships. And so as coach listeners, whether you're a leader, whether you're a peer coach, whether you are an external or internal coach, where are you spending your time? Are you really supporting people into that quicker, faster, different action? Or are you also pulling on the brakes to help people slow down in this ever-spirited world to gain
Mhm.
further awareness around what's working, what's not working, so they can run faster at a later
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful because it has to start with us as coaches. We have to have that awareness, we'll say.
Yes.
Because if we have that awareness of where we are comfortable or where we tend to sit, even in our group coaching programs, in our practicum programs, and many of our programs, we naturally hear where people are anchored. And I
Yes.
often say this in the conversation, great for you to recognize where you are, but you have to be present, talking about competencies here,
Yes.
maintaining presence in that space of unknown. What do your participants need and want? But if we don't know where we start, where we stand, where we're confident, but also where we can bring our strength, but it doesn't stop there because we're not, it's not the Evana group coach show.
Yes.
I'm not here about me. It's actually in service of my client's goals, my client's vision, my client's, dreams, we'll say. And so we have a responsibility to know where we are, but then our responsibility is to continue to grow our range so we can actually meet, as you said already, which is a beautiful point. So we can meet our participants where they are, but also stand for where they want and maybe need our support to get them there, whether it be slow down, as you said, slow down to speed up. And we'll talk about superpowers, that grounded labyrinth. Or is it about people who just love to talk and be philosophical about their life, but actually it's time to get you into some action?
Yeah. The catalytic firecracker.
The catalytic firecracker.
And so for those that might just be listening in for the first time, right? I've spent the better part of the last 2 years really taking a deep dive, not only through research, but building on to what I and as a business, we have seen here at Potentials Realized in training group and team coaches since 2006. A lot of people in the industry right now have been doing this work for 5 years, 10 years, but what about 20 years? You start seeing some interesting anecdotes. And so 2 years ago, I really wanted to get clear on what are we really seeing with the style of coaches in the landscape of group and team coaching. Yes, this can definitely apply to one-on-one. The focus has really been on the landscape of coaching many. Because as you said, Evana, we need to be meeting the range of clients where they're at. And so to a little bit against the strengths modality, which is like you just dig deeper into one. Actually, in coaching many, we need to expand our range and grow into all of these 5 superpowers that I've noticed. So we've got the grounded labyrinth, as Evana has made reference to. These coaches are really well-versed and so talented in the awareness realm. And we'll definitely be getting to that in our next podcast episode. But we also then have, in contrast, the catalytic firecracker. Think about the energy of a firecracker and the boldness, the vibrancy. Those coaches are all about metrics and action. That's different than the spiral lighthouse coach who is journeying with the client, helping them discern the different perspectives on every step around the staircase. And that too is very, very different than the creative tool master. So if you haven't taken the team and group coaching superpower quiz, please follow the link, right? It's bit.ly/GT coaching superpower. And here's what I'm excited about, because just a few weeks ago, the new Deckable deck launched. So the Activate deck is now available on your phone so that you can actually sit back and spend time looking at what are you doing? Where is your bias? Are you biased towards action? Are you biased towards awareness? And it needs to be an and in the realm of coaching many, because our clients in the room, on the Zoom, in teams are not going to be one type of person. Chances are, as we know, most diverse teams are the strongest teams. So how are we really enhancing our range to meet them there? So check out Deckable. You can do a 3-day trial, as we've heard, and invited to play with the app, because who isn't touching their phone up to 358 times a day? That's what the latest research shows.
Wow, is it?
358 times a day we touch our phone.
Wow. Can I just add something about the deckable deck too? There's so like what I love about it is, for the people who need to have that stillness, like there's meditation, but there's different ways to access and utilize the deckable deck. So don't be checking your biases and experiment with it, because what I love most about it is, as we've already talked about, is this range. We have to build our range. And I'm going to say this, the deckable deck is an easily accessible, lower price point tool
Yes.
as a coach that you can actually have and use, both to develop awareness, but also to develop muscle in that range. And so I say that's the teaser. The quiz is to help awareness in that bridge of awareness. The deckable deck is actually a tool to get you in that awareness, but also to start making some progress or taking action, and
Daily.
building that muscle daily.
Yes.
And I think this is a tool that, as much as we want to do this for our clients and our participants, we also want to do this for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was
we
the
have
one
to
thing
do it.
we do
have
have
to do it.
Thank
It's
you.
not a nice to do. This is a must do, especially
Yeah.
in an ever-changing environment. Because as you said, right, awareness is one thing. And how do we build the muscles? It's not
Yeah.
by showing up every week. It's about showing up every day to the plan, do track, daily steps, plus consistent action equals momentum.
Yeah.
That framework came out in 2017, right? Since then, we've seen Atomic Habits, BJ Fogg's tiny
Totally.
habits. It's just, we need to be in regular practice. And as you said, Evana, I think for people, even like myself, that love to embrace life on full tilt, what I love about Deckable is how easy they make it to pause, because there is the opportunity to journal on your phone and you can see the patterns of your thinking, of your reflections as you go. There's also the meditation function. I can set that timer and be still for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 12 minutes even. So
just notice the tools within the deckable deck for awareness, meditation, reflection. These are the tools we're talking about, and we need them as much for ourselves so that way we can show up in our conversations. And the other thing I want to just kind of do a little asterisk about is, this is not as like when we talk about building range, it's not something that happens overnight. I've been coaching for 10 years, and when I came into coaching is not the person I am now. I was even saying this to you or before we started recording, like even, the diverse hybrid styles. I'm a builder there. Why? Because innately I'm a getter done.
Yes.
However, coming into coaching, my growth and my evolution has actually now put me as grounded labyrinth as one of my strengths. But that's been over a course of a number of years. But I also, as we talked about it, even in episode number 5, intentionality, I knew that was my growth edge. I knew that was what was going to build my range. And so I invested in it. And this is what I want to share is that is something that is available to all of us through these tools, through the Activate Your Superpower program that we offer at Potentials Realized in different ways. And you also have the opportunity to know where your strengths are, but also like you and I dance in the co-coaching is also be able to pull in your pool of peers and colleagues, again, in service of your participants in where you're growing your range, but also so that way you can deliver a program that's going to maximize what their goals and desires are.
And I'm so glad you've sort of spotlighted that, because I think in this bridge from action to awareness, while we're undergoing our own growth edge and evolution, how do we partner with others, right? I think now that the ICF competencies are turning, I believe, 3 this year, hard to believe. And, part integral to that is this frame and this philosophy that a best practice in team coaching, as it always has been, as I wrote about in 2009 in Effective Group Coaching, it's about co-coaching. It's about co-facilitation. And our best partnerships are not with someone who is similar. Again, in growing our range, how are we partnering with others? How are we learning to work with each other? And that's another reason why Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpowers is so important. We've seen in the last 2 years of offering the 6-week 14 CCE program that it really helps coaches become aware of themselves. But the second layer is then in co-coaching essentials, another 6-week journey, another 14 CCEs. How do I partner effectively with someone who doesn't see the world my way, who activates and works differently? That can cause conflict, but it can also
Absolutely.
create creative tension, right? If we
Yeah.
reframe it as how do we now synergize, not align, but synergize together
Yeah.
to bring even more to the table for our clients, both of us, like you and I
Yeah.
are doing here, right?
Yeah. And I think it's so important because especially through these economic times, through these like through the what the world is dealing with right now, as coaches, as humans, we really need to go, okay, what can I bring? What can I offer? And it's not like there's a deficiency of that, but how can I complement? What is the complement? So the superpower quiz, I'm going to say this, is a complementary quiz, and it's a tool for self-awareness for you to at least have a conversation with your peer base and see where the compatibility is, not for your benefit, but for the group or the conversation of many you're participating in, or maybe even doing an RFP for. Do you know what I mean? So that's really
Yeah.
that, whatever that may or may not look like for you. And if
Yeah.
I may, Jen, I want to just kind of evolve the conversation, because a lot of the work that we do and in your intellectual property, your body of work, really another tool to kind of double down and anchor what we're talking about is the ERGA model. We actually talk about in group coaching essentials, that
Yeah,
experiential education, right? So I'm
absolutely.
going to let you talk a little bit about it, because I think that's a great tool for our coaches to, another tool for you to consider and kind of revisiting in terms of, am I bringing that shift of awareness at
Mhm.
like the value, the impact, and the what's next?
And so for those that are not familiar with ERGA, right, it is Kolb's model of experiential learning and really experience. How do we have an experience? How do we build a pause in the experience to reflect, to think about what worked, what didn't work, what happened even, right? That's really starting to discern the what. And the next step, ERG, is generalize. How is this element? If I'm leading or if I'm cutting people off, for example, how is that not only playing out in this last experience, but in the patterning of my life, of my work? We need to generalize the patterns that we see, the insights that we get. And as Kolb would say, learning does not just happen with this experience, the reflection, and now thinking about where else is it showing up. We now need to close the loop and have action. We need to take action. We need to iterate. We need to try it out. We need to experiment. These are the terms that we talk about in 2020, right? And onwards. But it's what's interesting. Kolb's model has been around for 50 years. Many of us, as critical educators, as experiential educators, cut our teeth on this in the 70s and 80s. So it's not new. Yet for coaches, it's integral. It's part of the root stem of this profession. And so where are you spending your time, right? To the bridge. It's not even just a bridge, it's a whole circle. Are we
Circle.
spending equal time in experience and helping our clients reflect on an experience, in generalizing their experience to many different contexts, and then into applying it and coming back with that application like a spiral to look at, well, what happened now? What worked better this time, but what still isn't working? Because the
Mm-hmm.
learning never ends. And I think the last piece, because we are coming to the end of this episode, is the learning needs to continue in seeing this landscape of coaching many and being part of it and being part of pioneering in this space for 20 years now. I have to keep learning. You have to keep learning. We all need to keep learning together because the world is changing and is demanding very different things from us than even yesterday. So, with that, I hope that today's bridge and spiral actually has inspired you to come back for our next episode, which will be all about awareness. So, Ivana, in our final minute together, what do you want to say as we go to wrap up?
Yeah, what I would just add is really use this time to really reflect, like even that ERGA model, in terms of
Mhm.
where you are as a coach. Where are you? Where do you start in the ERGA? Do you actually allow yourself to start at the E, right?
Mhm.
Or do you just jump right into the action of it? So it's kind of like that bridge of where are you? Do an inventory of where you are and where and what the impact is. What is the impact of where you're operating? Because as you said, and I'm going to leave it with this thought, is we're all here. We're all invited to continue learning. And as we continue to learn and grow and evolve, that's what opens the doorway and the pathway for the people that join us in our programs to do the same.
Well said. So we want to hear from you. Leave us a comment, give us a like, share this within your network, right? Because coaching many is not about one person talking. It's about a dialogue. And if you're not aware, we continue to meet roughly twice a month on Tuesdays for our community calls. If you can't make it live, check them out over at Effective Group Coach on YouTube. And with that, maybe you'll join us this fall for the Activate program. I'll actually be doing intensive in October, just an hour north of Toronto. Looking forward to that. And we're going to be bundling it with the hybrid work styles that Evana just made reference to. So with that, everyone, be well. Check it out, groupcoachingessentials.ca. And we'll see you soon for our longer episode on awareness.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Amazing.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.